has shifted. The world is accelerating. How does a country like Nigeria withstand tectonic shifts all around it? How does a society thrive with its economy, security, and lifestyle under constant disruption? How rapid do we have to act in a world where information is moving at the speed of light? As Nigeria's foremost economic think tank and policy advocacy organization, we have over the years made it our mandate to understand the complexities and champion the reform of the Nigerian economy. We are the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, and at NESG, all we do is in the national interest. By 2001, one of the NESG's principles had taken full focus: establishment of economic foundation for democracy. This meant that Nigeria had transited from military rule to democracy, and with a growth rate of 10%, the country was classified as one of the MINT nations. MINT is an acronym for Mexico, Indonesia, Nigeria, and Turkey countries, touted to become economic giants in the global space. Therefore, NEEDS was set up at the Nigerian Economic Summit as a medium-term poverty reduction, employment generation, and value reorientation strategy from 2003 to 2007. In 2007, the Vision 2010 was modified by the government of the day. The bold agenda was to join the League of Top 20 Nations in the world by 2020. The Nigeria Vision 2020 had ambitious targets and objectives to achieve rapid economic growth. Many years have passed, and the year 2020 approaches. You may ask us, what then has been the impact of all the astute recommendations that emanated from the Nigerian Economic Summits over the years?
You know, a few people have accused me, well, not so much accused me, challenged, especially when I was chairman, that what's NES, you guys just a talk shop. And I said, thank God we're still talking. Because if we had stepped aside, I wonder who it is or which body would exist today that transcends all bodies. You know, we don't really compete. Ours is, we are about the economy.
When government, either they release budget or not, now the economy is functioning. Now, sometimes people will say, oh, what have you people achieved? But that singular achievement to make market forces accepted and acceptable in this country, for me, was a Herculean achievement.
So I think the NESG work continues to put pressure, continue to remind us where we've come from, and more importantly, because the economy and the world is dynamic, NESG will continue to provide this opportunity to harness resources, harness brains in the private and public sector, you know, a concentrated effort to develop options for government.
You can imagine getting a military head of state to move from a very strong, opinionated position of public sector having a commanding height and control to saying, I want to do guided deregulation. That was a major shift.
I mean, after every summit, books were published that summarized the work that was done during the summit and the recommendations. I mean, this was genuine effort, fantastic effort that was provided, if you wish, on a silver plate. I'm not sure, I'm not a politician, I'm a businessman, so I know how business people think, but politicians think slightly differently. First, they want maybe to, I don't know how much they read what was developed, but they want to start or create their own agenda. And by the time the economic policy, the new economic policy was developed, there was a lot of similarity, in fact, but it wasn't called the Economic Summit's, if you wish, product. It was called the administration's product, which was fine.
Many years ago, we identified a number of laws rules that we thought were inimical to doing businesses again. So we proposed to government that some of these laws are rather obsolete and they need to be taken out. And government listened to some of those, and I think it made life a lot easier. For example, the process of registering companies used to be still cumbersome, but used to be a hell of a lot more cumbersome than it is today. The issue of land registration, issues such as sanctity of contracts. Government still, there's still impunity, but it's a lot better than it used to be.
For the government to recognize that even governance can be operated as a business. In other words, you must look at what you put in and what is coming out. Is it equivalent with the efforts and the resources applied? Without NESG and the annual economic summit, that kind of thinking would not have gone into government. Second, NESG made it possible for government people to know that leaders must be trained and trained at the highest level.
Actually set up the committee that drafted the legislation, and I was a member of that committee. Our chairman was Apostle Alili of blessed memory, and a few others. We drafted that law, presented it to the government. I think that must be 1997. And other than changing who appoints chairman and members of the commission, what you have as today's Nigeria Investment Promotion Act is verbatim a draft from NESG. So not only do we propose ideas, we also provide implementation templates.
How ideas such as privatization that were initially an anathema in this country, is now accepted and taken as one of the options in terms of helping to drive efficiency in an economy. So I certainly think that the NESG has a very important role to play in Nigeria's economic development. And the private sector and the public sector are two sides of the same coin. They can't do without each other.
And I think if there's any legacy that is going to be left behind by Nigerian Economic Summit, is the fact that we succeeded tremendously in bridging that divide between the Nigerian public sector and ourselves. Neither can do without the other. One is a policy maker that creates an enabling environment for the private sector to fill that space and create goods and services. And the other is the private sector, which is very, very important to the government itself.
Are we where we should be? No. Have we made progress, significant progress? Because honestly, if you know where we started from versus where we are now, you can see the progress we've made. The only disappointment, like I said, is that the progress is not commensurate to the effort at making the progress happen.
Created what we call the Governors Forum, where we brought state governors to the party. In essence being, listen, yes, Nigeria, we know the federal government is in Abuja, but the bulk of our populace are actually in the states, right? That's where the population is. And so whatever the policies we're talking about in healthcare, in education, in infrastructure, in economy, whatever, unless these things made sense in the states, unless it impacted the lives of our people in the states and the local governments, those things were meaningless.
Some of us found a bit of a challenge because what people have tended to see is the annual gatherings at the summit, and people don't actually know what goes on behind. So it became a problem year in, year out, where we would attend the summit and people shoot up their hands and ask questions like, yeah, you just come here, you gather together and you just this talk shop. Some of us were actually aggravated by such statements. In fact, I remember at one of the summits, I actually stood up to counter that because I just felt that the institution was being completely misunderstood, because the institution was being judged by what people saw because they didn't know what went on behind. But then, of course, the beauty of it is that it then spurred us as an institution to say, you know what, let's sit back, let's think through. And so these 4 dimensions came up. You play the role of the watchdog, you play the role of a connector, you play the role of a dialogue partner, or you actually be an intervener. We looked at all of those and then said, you know what, going forward, what are the areas that we needed to strengthen? We've strengthened very seriously our intervening activities, particularly with the National Assembly. And if you went down to subnational governments, how we've now started to work with a few of the state governors that have been quite responsive to the kind of services that we could engage with them in order to make sure that we don't just recommend, but we also participate in pushing forth the kind of agenda that could help the Nigerian economy.
The recommendations coming out of those summits are used by government to improve policy making. So NESG has not just through the instrument of the summit, but also through other interventions helped government in providing data so that decision making is evidence-based in a number of cases. I know that some of the key decisions of governments also have been subjected by reviews to reviews by NESG, I think, panels, different sets of reviews, and there's also some policies that government took that were outcomes of the reports of the economic summits. I want to really congratulate NESG for the outstanding achievements that it has had over these years, and to urge the NESG to maintain the momentum, to maintain its non-partisanship stance and independence, and to continue to support both government and the private sector to achieve the Nigeria of our dreams. Nigeria has the capacity to be a global power, and it certainly has a capacity to be a lead nation in Africa. So there are potentials that are lying fallow that could be reawakened, and NESG is the let me say the supreme institution, as far as I'm concerned, the supreme think tank of Nigeria. There are others, but NESG has been the leader, and it must work towards continuing to maintain that lead.